All right. At Casa de Latorre, drawing and painting through School of the Arts. I'm going to show some of the rudiments and through some drawing lessons here. Some fairly quick ones. But I'm going to start off with faces. And generally, it's something I introduced in 7th grade. And I will also continue with them in 9th grade with rotations and expressions and whatnot. But the introduction happens in 7th grade. And in general, we go over face shapes initially. The head shape in particular helps determine the majority of a likeness. And even though we're not attempting a portrait right now, we're going to be coming up with something that would approach a credible head. So whether that head shape is ovalish, whether or not it may be straight on the sides, and maybe there's a bent staple shape for the jaw and a roundness at the top of the head. Whether some head shapes have a gentle peak at the top. Sometimes you see that someone has a shaved head. Maybe the sides of the head are bracketed. And maybe, again, I go to the bent staple shape at the bottom. That's my son, Josh, here in the back. Whether or not some head shapes are closer to being more square shaped, where it's flat on the sides. And although they're curves, you can see a gentle flattening of the sides. It really depends. There's such a myriad of head shapes available. What I'm going to do on a different sheet of paper is I'm going to mark the paper near each side. So I'm working as close to life size as I can. The idea here being that if I can keep it closer to life size, it'll be easier to figure out proportions. But I'll explain a little bit. I'm going to now connect those marks as best as I can with some gentle curves and a jaw shape. And if yours is somewhat different, that's fine. There's a lot of variation involved, like I said before. One of the things that I'd like to do after the head shape is in is start blocking out a face map. And the face map helps us figure out proportions or how big certain parts should be compared to other parts. So I will cut down the center as a center axis. And then I'll go halfway down that axis. And I'll put a mark and I'll go across the head this way. And that gives me an idea of the eye line. Halfway down from the eye line to the chin, I'll mark down. And that would give me the nose line. Halfway between the nose and the mouth, and the chin, becomes the mouth. And those are rough guidelines so you can get some relatively believable proportions involved. They can alter a little bit, but not by much. Usually the next stop I'd like to take is eyes. And generally as a rule of thumb, the head is generally 5 eyes wide. And again, there's some room for variation. Usually the space between the eye is about equal to the width of the eye. So I might do something like this. And you can see that this is roughly 5 eyes wide, more or less. If I go for eye shape, I'm going to go to a different sheet of paper again. I'm going to talk to you about eye shape some. You have the head shapes here. Eye shape is generally a leaf or football shape, but there is variation, of course. Sometimes you'll see a bent staple shape, then the upside down rainbow. Sometimes you'll see something called a peak, where the top of the eye peaks in the center before you get to an upside down rainbow. Other times there's an offset peak, where the peak approaches one side of the eye, then the other. In some cases, you might even see what's called, what I call an exotic curve. You'll see kind of like an S shape. It looks like someone took the ends of an S and pulled them and straightened them out. So, if I go back to my original drawing, I'm going to fit one of those eye shapes here, and I like that kind of bent staple shape, and I'll make it roughly fit the space I have in between. If I were to continue with the actual eye details, I might fill in the eye shape with what's known as the iris, the colored part of the eye. And we wanted to take up most of the eye. If I go back to this little sample, if I draw the iris where you can see the white above and below the eye shape, it makes the person look like they're like a deer caught in headlights. So the iris should take up most of that spot. In addition, when I put the pupil inside, that's the part, the aperture that allows light into the eye, that can adjust with size. If it's wider, it tends to imply that there's a lot of light, very little light in the room. Whereas if it's very small, it means that there's more light in the room the pupil's trying to cut back on some of that light. In any event, no matter how the iris is, the pupil is always centered in the center. So if I bring this back here, you'll see that I have my iris set up already. And I will draw the pupil inside, and I try to center it in there as if I could see the iris going past the eyelid, so as if I could see it in completion. And I'll center my pupil inside that. And I'll do that for the other eye. If I continue on with eye details, I might do things like eyelids. If I go back to my sampler sheet, that eyelid is really just a fold of where the flap of the eye retreats into the optic cavity. So if I'm going from one part of the eye to the other, I could simply do that. In some other cases, you might even see it reflect the top shape of the eye. In other cases, you might see it start on the edges, but not complete itself in the center. Yet in other cases, you might see it in the center, but not the edges. And you might also see it start on one side, go across the center, and not complete itself. So there's, again, a lot of variation there, which is why we have so many people looking as different as they do. Going back to the main drawing, I'm going to do that eyelid shape. It's kind of shaped like, for me, a hockey stick sort of. And it gives me the basics. The nose is one of those other facial features that's really tough. And generally in drawing, you'll see sometimes various abbreviations. Sometimes you'll see just holes for the nose. Sometimes you'll see something like this, which will imply the tip of the nose as well as the nostril walls. Yet in other cases, you might see the same thing, more or less, but you'll see a greater implication of the nostrils. Yet in other cases, you'll actually see the loops of the nostrils, like so, and you'll see an outline of the nostril walls. In any event, all these are more or less abbreviations for something else. And so if I show you what the nose looks like, the method I use for 7th graders, because it's easier for them to understand, is to draw an upside down ice cream cone. So there's the ice cream cone. That'll give me roughly the length of the nose. And at the base of the ice cream cone, I'll go from corner to corner and fill that ice cream cone up with a circle or ice cream. But it's important that I touch the corners of the triangle, otherwise it looks very silly. Once I have that, I will attach circles on the side. They could be ovals on the side. They can be placed a little higher, a little lower for placement of the nostrils. That's good. And it ends up looking kind of like a lawn gnome, so to speak. However, if I erase the top of the triangle and I darken up basically the outline of the entire mass, I call it skinning. It's almost like I'm wrapping this in cellophane. And I erase the details on the inside. They were important at one point, but I no longer need them. There goes my eraser. You can see I have a rough nose shape. And then I can reflect what's happening with the nostrils. Here, no nostrils are showing. I could actually give you a hint of nostrils, or I can actually show you the full loop depending on how much of the nostrils I want to see. And that's dependent on whether the head's tilted back or how much the nose itself is tilted. So if I go back to my original drawing, I will go from the eye line to the nose line, and the width of that nose gives me a rough idea, or the width of that triangle gives me a rough idea of the width of the nose. I'll add that ice cream in, and then I'll add additional width with those circles for the nostrils. Again, I'll take what eraser I have, I'll erase the top of the triangle, and I'll skim the outside of this, and I'll press a little harder so you can see this. Get the eraser and erase some of the non-essentials, and you can see the hint of a nose here. You'll notice that I erased the top of the triangle because I'm trying to start the evidence for the bridge of the nose. And that can be wider than I currently have here. I can also, again, reflect, there's a hint of nostrils in here. And again, I can adjust things because I am working in pencil, but I'll just do this on the ones through. Going back to this piece of paper, I can scratch. We can start talking about the mouth, and I'm going to eliminate facial expression because that makes things a bit harder. But the mouth is essentially 3 lines. The center, which is the opening, the top of the top lip, and the bottom of the bottom lip. And that's essentially a basic mouth. There's, again, like the eyes and the nose, there's a lot of variation that lays in there. I can have what I call the M shape. I can give myself a McDonald's M, and then give myself an upside-down rainbow shape. I can also give myself the McDonald's M, maybe another McDonald's M, and maybe an inverted McDonald's M and end up with a different mouth shape. I can also give you the upside down rainbow with the McDonald's M and another rainbow shape. And like the eye, I can give you a peak. I can give you that M, and I can give you the bent staple shape. So again, there's a lot of variations in the mouth, even though it's all essentially the same. If I go back to the main model here, this line here, it might appear that it might be the center of the mouth, it could be the top of the top lip, or the bottom of the bottom lip. It really depends. It gives you a rough idea of where the mouth is placed. So for me, it kind of looks like the bottom of the bottom lip for me. So this could be the center, this could be the top. And the placement of the top lip is important. Because I want to make sure that there's not too much space in between the bottom of the nose and the top of the top lip. If there's a lot of space, you'll start looking like a simian, or you could draw a matchbox scarf. So I'm going to go for kind of a bent staple shape, and then a McDonald's M, and then another bent staple shape. Width of the mouth is up to you, but a general rule of thumb is that the width of the mouth approaches the center of the pupils. Here I made the mouth a little bit more narrow. And once I have that, I have the basics. I can start filling in some information on the head that I'm missing, such as the ears. The ears, I think of like a squished C shape. So here's a C. If I squish it, it's almost like a mug handle. And it always starts at the eye line. That's why we can wear eyeglasses. The stem of the eyeglasses lines up with the top of the ear where it connects. Not the very top of the ear where the cartilage is, but where it connects. Whether or not you do dangling earlobes or connected earlobes is up to you. That's entirely up to the artisan themselves. As far as the details on the ear, again, switching over to the scrap paper. Here's the side of the head. Here's the ear. If I look at the top contour of the ear, if I repeat it just a little bit below, it'll look like that ridge of cartilage that helps collect sound. And then if I add a little speed bump here along the side of the head, it'll look like that piece of cartilage that you generally tuck in the ear if there's a loud noise. The inside of the ear is pretty complicated, but I can simplify it if you know how to draw a bubble letter Y, such as that. That makes things a bit easier. So if I go back to the ear, if you watch carefully, you can see that bubble letter Y appear. I know this is kind of gimmicky, but this is very helpful for 7th graders to draw, especially when they have no previous drawing experience whatsoever. So if I now apply that knowledge to the model head, I'll put that ridge of cartilage in there. Here's that speed bump. And here's that bubble letter Y. And I'll repeat it on the other side. There's that ridge of cartilage, there's that speed bump, and here's that bubble letter Y. You can see that it's now approaching something that's a bit more credible. So that's the general basis of the head. The next step would be thickness of the neck. Generally, you look at where the ears are, and then you can decide thickness of the neck based on that. If the thickness of the neck happens at the earlobes themselves, it's a pretty wide neck. If I start traveling away from the ears, it's skinnier. And if you go too skinny, it's going to look like a bobblehead. So I'm going to mark in a little bit down from the earlobes away from the jaw. And you can see the neck appear.
Yeah.
I'm going to grab another sheet of paper and I have a little quick tutorial on hairline. I'm going to draw a few ovals just to demonstrate. And if I block these as face maps quickly, and hopefully I'm drawing dark enough where you can see this.
Yellow.
The hairline is almost always attached to the eyeline. So in some cases you might have a simple rainbow shape. And the hairline implies where the hair stops and it's just skin that happens after that. So if I go back over here, I might have kind of like that bent staple shape. In other cases, I might have what's called a widow's peak. But you see, in each of these cases, it starts at the eyeline. If I go to the other side, I might go ahead and do the edge up. I go diagonally in, up, across, then down, and then diagonally back. And that would give you hairline. So I'm going to pick hairline here. That's where I'll stop for today. I will give this person a simple hairline, a rainbow shape, I think. And I will tackle hair at a different time and eyebrows and other facial hair, simply because there's so many variations that it's going to be hard to cover in the same lesson. But this will give folks a refresher for those who have had it, and those who haven't had it. It gives them an intelligent idea of how to go about doing the beginning of a credible face. Thanks. Hang in there, everyone. Stay healthy.